Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next edition of our panel discussion brought to you by Golden Technology. My name is Brian Markham, and I'm the CEO of Golden Technology. And I would just like to thank you all for joining us today. I am super excited to sit and have a chance to listen to this phenomenal panel. And this topic is very, very fascinating. Delivering IT projects in the emerging hybrid work environment, and I would actually call it the ever-changing work environment. So I'm looking forward to seeing this dynamic from our moderator to our panelist discussion between talent acquisition, HR, and the C-levels in IT to see how they're going to face this battle over the next 12 months. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for this discussion. And it's an excellent opportunity to introduce you to Kirby Cole. Kirby, who has 15 years of experience in human resources and talent acquisition, along with a human resource master's degree in HR development from Webster University, and currently is the director of talent acquisition for iCare Partners, which has 550 locations throughout 18 different states. So welcome, sit back, enjoy the ride, and Kirby, take it away, and thank you so much for leading this conversation. Of course, while we're still up here, folks, I don't know if everybody can hear me now. I just want to let you know we're currently bringing Kirby back into the picture. And while we're waiting for Kirby to get back onto the restream, I think it's important to note that this is going to be an interesting conversation around human resources, trying to find the people, trying to acquire the people. When some organizations are requiring people to come back to work, some organizations are saying it's okay, and some folks are looking for to do what you want to do. And these C-levels are going to be very interesting on how they're going to be managing that relationship. So I can quickly take a minute and introduce you to these panelists. The first panelist I would like to bring up to the conversation is Jim Cavalier, the EVP and CIO at CAS Information Systems. CAS is the national leading provider of transportation, energy, telecom, and environmental invoice systems, invoice payment and processing systems. Jim is responsible for the company's global IT, if I'm not mistaken, the strategy and all the operations. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, Brian. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And then our next introduction here is going to be with Joe Meadows. Joe is the Vice President of Information Systems at Gaylor Electric. Joe is a pragmatic, proactive leader with a broad business and technical expertise in driving the lean and effective application of information technologies with 30 years of experience. Joe brings a wide perspective to current technology challenge. Joe holds a master's degree and 11 technical certifications. Wow, did I read that right? 11? That's pretty impressive. And in his current role as the Vice President of Information Systems from Gaylor Electric, he leads the IT department there. And so,
thanks, Brian.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So we will check in to see. We lost our panel, our moderator here. So here you go. This is a fine example of the difficulties we're dealing with delivering projects. We can't even pull off a panel here. So we'll welcome next Terry Williams. Terry Williams is the CIO at Belkan Corporation. It sounds like Kirby is coming back, so let's give him a couple minutes to come online because I am flying blind here, and I think Kirby's much better prepared for this conversation than I am. There's Mr. Kirby.
What's up, everybody?
Oh, I've never been so happy to see you, Kirby.
That was awesome. I don't know what just happened, but everything that we tested earlier today just went to heck in a handbasket, and I ended up having to restart, and here we are. So that's life in today's age, I guess, right?
Right, that's right.
All right. So next up, I'm not going to read the whole bios. I know that they're in the information that's sent out. Next up is Terry Williams, is the CIO at Belkin. Hi, Terry. Terry's got a nice view there. I like that view. Next is Supanta Banerjee, the CIO here at iCare Partners.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for having me, Kirby.
Yeah, man. Glad to see you. And then Aaron Geiger is the CTO and CIO at the Alberici Group.
Hi, Kirby. Good to join everyone today.
Yeah. This is my first time using Restream, and Restream flips the view of my face on the camera, and it's really freaking me out because everything looks backwards to me. So again, just another one of those fun technology things that we're living through. So excited to be here and talk with a few folks about delivering IT solutions in the new hybrid environment. Obviously, this has become a much more pressing issue in the last 18 months. As COVID has certainly changed the way that we view work. Hybrid is sort of just par for the course today. So we will kind of do a round robin of a few topics that we think are important. And as always, if anybody who is listening or viewing online has any questions, be sure to pop them over into the chat, and we will address some of them live and then get to the rest of them towards the end of the conversation. So with that, the first question we'll start out with will be with Jim. Jim, talk a little bit about companies' return to work. What is your company's return to office policy currently, and what all have you learned in the last 18 months?
Sure. Good afternoon, Kirby. And I just wanted to say thank you again for inviting me to join the panel. And likewise, thank you to your group for hosting this and putting this on. I think it's something that all of us would benefit from. As you mentioned before, I'm with CAS Information Systems. CAS is based out of St. Louis. We're a global company, global footprint, and we're in the business of payments, invoice auditing, payments, and so forth. You asked the question about what our return to work policy is and kind of some of the lessons learned. We've been remote since March 16th. I remember the date well when I got the phone call, and we scurried over the weekend. So it's been about a year and a half that we've been fully remote. Things went very well for us when we were remote. We had just finished in December moving a lot of our back office automation and collaboration tools into the cloud. We moved our call centers into the cloud, phone centers into the cloud. So we really didn't skip a beat when we went remote. We were prepared. One of our board members said, were you good or did you just get lucky? And we said it's probably some combination of the two. But I think what we've learned most over the last 18 months, and I don't think we're unique, is the fact that you can be effective working remote. You can be effective in delivering applications, supporting and delivering technology. It's probably something that the IT organization has known for many years, but has expanded beyond the IT organization across the rest of the business. And I think that was a good lesson to learn for us. What's worked well for us, having the trust in our staff and employees to keep things up and running, I think has been a big enabler for us. It's a motivator. It always has been, even more so in a remote work. One of the challenges I think that we've had since being remote is you have to still watch and be cognizant of burnout. It's hard when you're working in your home office all day. The day seems to just extend. It starts early, it ends late. It kind of drones on, and we find ourselves having to force folks or do things that deliberately get people out of their home office or get them to take a break. But I think what we've learned, as I said, over the past 18 months is it is an effective model. It's a great model for balancing some of the work-life needs that our folks have, and still delivering on some of the important priorities of the companies that we work for, and it's very doable.
Very good. Aaron, how about you?
Sure. So I think similar to Jim, that we would probably all echo the kind of lucky, kind of prepared. We're a North American construction business, so we have workers all over we had workers all over the country before COVID, so we were pretty well prepared in that regard. Our return to office policy is really a hybrid approach that allows us to tune it to each employee in their particular role, because really everyone's situation is a little different. So we created a framework to work within. I think one thing we've learned just through our thinking through the different ways we can approach return to the office is the less prescriptive we could be around particular schedules for one particular person, that actually seems like the right way to go. And then when you start thinking about all the knock-on effects of trying to put people in a box of your day is Monday, your day is Wednesday, for us, we've landed on a real agile, communicative plan where people can work where they want to work best, but also, figure out each week what sort of collaboration do I have to do? Do I have a bunch of deep work? Do I have a bunch of meetings where it's maybe more productive to be in person? So those are a few of the things we've learned.
So you don't have your team coming back on set days. The infrastructure team is on Tuesdays and the other team is on Wednesdays. It's pretty
that actually
still.
causes. Yeah, it really causes more pandemonium than it does structure.
Yep.
What we have done is a little bit of scheduling around where we really have hoteling situations. So we do have some of our team members are really on a full week in the office, week at home rotation where they're sharing a desk space. So there you obviously need the scheduling, but otherwise we're pretty agile with it.
Yep, that's actually how we are in our HR department. We keep share, so we've got to know who's coming and going. But Joe, how about you? And I got to be honest, I'm glad that I actually timed my reemergence to this so that I didn't have to try to say your last name. I was dreading it. I've been texting Liz about it. So how about you?
Sure.
Talk about your return to work so far.
Sure. So again, we're in the construction field. So as an essential business, we were not out of the office very long, pretty much March until May. That transition went pretty smoothly. I would say that what we learned was more of a culture shift. We've had the technology for a long time to do video conferencing and meet in that fashion, but the culture really valued in-person, face-to-face, and we would have people coming in to office locations from 2 or 3 hour drives away. We would fly to meet remote offices, and we had a lot of travel expenses that we just couldn't do during that time. So one of the things that I think we learned is the culture began to accept the notion that a video conference is sufficient, when the previous culture had been that there was a serious value on the face-to-face time. So that's probably one of the things that we've done. I know that we have evidence of that because our travel budget has dropped by more than half as we've adopted this technology, and it's become more of the culture than it had been before we were forced into it.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're there too. How about you, Terry?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we were an essential business, and Belkan is a global company with about 10,000 employees. We're in aerospace engineering, space and defense, and government IT, as well as technical recruiting and supply chain management. I actually feel sometimes like I'm working for 5 different companies. But what we've learned is that, having a single written in-stone policy has not been the best choice. And there are just too many variables going on right now. Our policy continues to evolve in terms of employees coming back to the office. We do have some situations where employees absolutely have to be in the office and work from the office for security reasons. But there's been nothing that's really kind of based in stone. So I would say that our policy is a flexible, circumstantial policy. Obviously, we want to ensure the health and safety of our employees, but we also want to make sure that we're balancing our policies with the ability to continue to be efficient in the businesses that we run. So, one of the things I've noticed is that I liken this kind of hybrid solution to some of the issues they dealt with in school systems. And, not all employees are really great work at home employees. Just like some students are unable to, learn and work effectively at home. And the other thing is that, work and family balance is a challenge during normal times. And we have learned that any interruption in school, daycare, work schedules can have a drastic impact on employees. It's all one kind of family ecosystem, and all of them were disrupted this time at the same time. So, going forward, one of the things that we're looking to do is have some type of predefined employee business continuity, just like you would have, disaster recovery continuity, some type of business continuity that's just focused on, this type of situation and supporting employees and the business at the same time.
That's great. You guys are all over the place, so it's going to be interesting. So Supanta, how about you? And I, because I know you a little bit, I know that our challenge is probably a little bit different than the rest of the group because we support, and Supanta's group supports our corporate function, but also, a medical function. So it's a little bit of a different approach for us. So go ahead, Supanta.
Yeah. First off, thank you, Golden Tech and Kirby, for the opportunity to be with this esteemed panelist, and I'm very excited. A little bit of about our business. So we are a $1 billion optometry and ophthalmology eye care provider. So essentially, we provide A to Z of eye care services to our patients, and I'm really proud of that. So I am with the company for over past 14 months, and we are growing tremendously. We have added a significant amount of workforce over the past years, and we have been growing exponentially. And with that growth, of course, the opportunity and challenge comes up when we had to send most of the people back home. So we had a good infrastructure already in place. We leveraged on that. My team had always been a distributed team. So as Kirby was mentioning, I have team members that supports our practices that are some practices in Michigan, some practices in Kansas, etc. So I had already had distributed team across the board who are working together, leveraging the technologies such as Google Meet and Zoom and etc. So that kind of continued. And as some of the other panelists have said, I'm also of the firm believer that the more prescriptive that we get with the policies, the lesser effective they become. So we, in my group, we have flexibility for the employees who wants to share desk spaces, etc. We do have hoteling cubes, etc. What I have been noticing that the leaders, the managers in subgroups of IT, they are determining how they want to allocate that hoteling space, how they want to track the employee productivity and things such as that. And I cannot be happier than what the team has produced over past 14-15 months or so. So essentially a less prescriptive policy, and I see that as we continue to grow, we will be adopting the ways of working remote.
Very good. So quickly, in terms of collaboration, I think that talk a little bit again quickly about any additional tech that you guys brought to the table. I know like we use Google Meets, or one of them has like a whiteboarding function that you can use now. Anything specific like that you all have leveraged that I know some of you were already fairly in the cloud, but new things that folks, if they haven't heard of, should look at. Aaron, why don't you go first on this one?
Sure. One thing that we had started to adopt before COVID happened was the Zoom Room technology, whereas we were already a Zoom customer, and we were starting to see the value of that. And I think now we're nearly at 100% of all of our conference rooms in all of the enterprise. That's really important because I think what you've just heard from all the panelists, none of us are going to 100% back in the office. There's very few companies that are just going to say everybody has to be in the office no matter what. So your meetings now are going to have a group of people in a conference room and other people in all different locations. And it's important not to create a preferred situation. So you don't want the people that are remote to feel like they're left out. And at the same time, you don't want to be in a conference room huddled around a laptop trying to look at a screen for the people that are remote. So for us, the Zoom room technology has been really nice. All of our employees can just walk in and hit the green button and do their meeting. They don't need assistance from technology. And I think to Joe's point, our travel budget moving forward will never be what it was, but we will still meet in person, probably like when we're doing a new project and we're introducing a group of people. That's probably an in-person meeting that we go ahead and fly people in for. But then after that, once you know each other, you can conduct a lot of business on a video platform and not need to fly people all over the place.
Yep. I don't know about you, but our the green screen or green room technology like that, it turns on whenever we walk in the room, and it freaks me out every single time because it senses that we're in the room. So I'm like, stop looking at me. Sorry. Joe, how about you?
So similar to Aaron, we were a Zoom customer prior to this, and Zoom rooms were in place. I would say the thing that it pushed us towards, we had already laid out plans to move some of our primary systems out to cloud environments, and that sort of accelerated our plan. That was certainly a factor that we accelerated those timelines to move some of those resources out to the cloud so that they were secure and easier for us to get to without everybody coming through a single VPN pipe and that sort of thing. So I would say our biggest change was it accelerated our timeline, moving some of our primary apps out to their individual cloud spaces.
Very good. Terry?
Yes, we initially had employees across the organization looking for tools to use when everything first started. And we found ourselves with essentially tool overload. So we had to choose a few de facto standards across the organization. I have to tell you, it's sometimes it's hard to pull, some of the choices that were made, from the users, because there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm for certain tools, and that's the biggest hurdle that we had to deal with, was that some of them were tied to certain tools, and it was hard to say, look, across the company we're going to choose a few de facto standards, and Zoom and Teams were the two predominant platforms that we use. The one thing that we did find out is that our users over a period of time, it did require some training in terms of some of the advanced features that they had not used before. But over a period of time, we saw more and more confidence in using some of the remote collaboration tools. And employees just found ways to be more creative internally. And the key thing is that, using these tools externally for customers. So, it was a new, I would say, forced collaboration approach that has changed a lot of things that we do in the business. And that includes, recruiting, I heard the reduction in travel. This is the first choice for any work that we have to do that may require travel, or communications with our clients. And I have to say, I have a global team, so I'm much more comfortable having a West Coast, East Coast, European team using the collaboration tools now than I was, prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, that's great. So don't tell our CIO at iCare Partners, but I am a tool renegade and went out and got some things before I was told not to. So yeah, so we won't talk about that, but I understand that the individual user once needed something, right? Like when things popped up, actually, Samantha, you weren't here yet, and I was like, I'm going to go get a Zoom account. We don't have it corporately yet, but we need it. And so now apparently I'm the Zoom person at their partners, and I get bugged for it all the time. So I've given it up. But how about you, Terry? I'm sorry, Subhanta.
Yeah, just wanted to add, and I think I thought the previous panel members did a fantastic job. I'll just add that we found opportunities where we might not have had video conferencing type of solutions in some of our conference rooms. So we took these opportunities to implement that. And what I have been finding is, you call it Teams, Zoom, Google, all of these players are great at improving their collaboration tools. And I personally see that all of these players and beyond these players also have done a tremendous job to keep up with the customer demands, and each are competing very closely with each other. Some people think that one platform does not provide the breakout room or chat room or group chat and things such as that. It turns out that all of these providers have those. So I think we have been learning, our employees, of course, beyond employees, business users. I'm seeing that we are heavily using chat functions, group chat functions, room functions, whiteboarding, etc. That probably we would not have done otherwise in the past.
Very good. Last but not least, Jim.
Sure. If there's a silver lining with COVID, it's that I can't think of a better catalyst to help drive the adoption of some of the collaboration tools. Prior to COVID, I mentioned before, we rolled out Office 365, soft phones, and after COVID hit, before we were sending out tips and tricks in emails and newsletters to help encourage individuals to move into those platforms. And shortly after, our business partners were sending us tips and tricks and things that they've learned to help utilize and promote the use of the technology. So it's gone very well for us in that respect. In fact, in the regards to soft phones, we rolled out a cloud-based phone system before. I think our phone usage has dropped down dramatically, and since we've gone to Office 365, communications on a daily basis is done via Teams, via video, and that's become the norm.
Yeah, I don't use my phone nearly as much. Even for our interviews, right? We'll hop on a Zoom meeting or Google as opposed to picking up the phone. So
it's really become the de facto.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. So show of hands, who all, we've talked about it a little bit. Travel budget going down, show of hands, yes. How about space budget, right? That's another interesting thing is are your companies talking about a change in the necessary amount of space needed because there are less people coming into the office? Show of hands, yes. Okay, so 3, yeah. So I mean, that's another interesting thing. I think about places like New York, right, where they've got all the space where people used to go sit. It's going to be interesting over the next couple of years to see how that plays out for sure. So some of the next questions, I'm gonna kind of skip around. I think we've kind of talked about technologies that have helped us most during remote work. So let's talk a little bit about SaaS versus homegrown applications. Who's using what and who's having the best results with which. So Terry, you want to take a lead on this one?
Sure. This is certainly a hot topic within our company because the uniqueness of the businesses that we're in. You look at something like aerospace or space and defense, there aren't a lot of SaaS applications to fit the needs of those industries. However, what I would say is that, I'm always looking at SaaS solutions first for, if nothing else, for expediency purposes. And the SaaS market has changed, tremendously over the last 5 years. There are just more options out there. And so, that's always the first place I look. But I'm not sure that SaaS and homegrown are comparable They really serve a few different purposes. But the decision to explore SaaS applications versus homegrown comes down to what is available in the market. SaaS applications have come a long way as far as adding rich features to mimic some of the on-prem solutions. And providing enough configuration flexibility to reduce most of the customization requirements. There are some obvious choices for SaaS. For example, I don't think it would be reasonable today to build your own HR application. I don't know if I found it easier to work with SaaS applications versus homegrowns. Like I said, I think they serve a couple different purposes. I would say there are a lot more options today for specialty needs. Relative to SaaS applications, they always allow for, and there's always a need for homegrown. They're not going to go away. Typically, they're homegrown are purposely built, especially apps for industries that don't have the luxury of out-of-the-box functionalities, similar to, like I said, the aerospace industry. But I always have a rule of thumb. If I'm looking at a SaaS application and it can meet 70 to 80% of our needs, the other 20%, I'm sure that we can find ways to work around it. And it's just the opposite, for homegrown. If I have to do a lot of custom work to make them work in our environment, and there's not a lot of out-of-the-box functionality, then we look seriously at homegrown. We just know that that's probably going to extend the time of bringing it to the business and developing those types of applications. So, that's the rule of thumb that I follow. I don't know that COVID has changed that much, but I would say that it helps that a lot of the applications that we use are currently in the cloud and SaaS applications.
Very good. Supanta, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree with Terry. I just maybe add a couple of points. As also Terry mentioned, from business user perspective, it really doesn't make much of a difference whether it is a SaaS or a homegrown application. And I'm of the opinion that we should continue to use the SaaS applications for business functions such as HR, finance, supply chain, etc., maybe with minor customization, where you cannot find an industry led solution that doesn't specifically meet your business needs. In other words, if it is specialty, you do not have a choice. We would prefer to build that something that is truly a differentiator, something truly that genuinely that would create a differentiated experience for our patients and for our doctors. We would look to invest on building that. Otherwise, we would like to adopt the well-proven, well-thought-out, several years of experience that the companies that have built systems for finance, supply chain, HR, business functions as such.
All right. Can you hear me still?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure my computer's being goofy. And so I just wanted to make sure. Jim, you want to keep going on that topic?
Yeah. Kirby, I agree with some of the other comments. I don't know if it's a one or another, but for us, I mentioned before, we're in the payments business. I often think of ourselves as a 115-year-old fintech organization. We do about 60 billion in payments, and we serve markets that don't have SaaS solutions available. So we're 100% homegrown, internally developed applications across all divisions, which has really been beneficial for us. We control our own destiny. But that said, we have moved development to the cloud. We fully adopted the DevOps model. We moved all of our platforms into a cloud model, and we've seen some of the efficiencies of that. And back to the comment about some of the challenges of having from a timing perspective of homegrown, we've begun to adopt low-code, no-code platforms within the organization that have helped to accelerate or speed up the development process and create more reusability within the organization. And those are cloud-based. So those are some of the things that we've done.
Very good. Joe?
Yeah, I really agree with what Terry said. The offerings in the SaaS space have developed quite rapidly, and it used to cover, you only saw SaaS applications that did a great big chunk of what you needed done. And now you're seeing SaaS apps that do very specific things for you, much smaller things. And again, I look to out-of-the-box solutions, the SaaS solutions. Just as Terry said, if it'll do 70 to 80% of what we need out of the box, that's probably the solution that we're going with. There's a lot of aspects to that, including long-term cost, and particularly in things where the rules change in the environment, such as anything to do with accounting and tax software where the rules change. Somebody else is responsible for changing that. That's always an effective use for letting someone else deal with those things that change frequently that you have no control over. So I'm a big believer in trying to find something out of the box that does most of what we need done, and then figuring out the smaller details, almost exactly like Terry said.
Did we lose Kirby? We did lose Kirby. I've got the questions. You want me to keep going, guys?
Yes, let's keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Let's talk about work appropriately. So let's talk a little bit about how you've used trust as a motivator with your teams. And let's start with Terry.
Yeah, this one was, I have to say, somewhat of a challenge, because I've always looked at metrics, and I do review our operational and service delivery metrics. The difference is I'm now getting data and reviewing metrics at a more granular level, meaning I'm looking at individual productivity metrics, which are specific to, for example, agile software development delivery metrics, service tickets at the technician level, help desk, individual tickets, or call handling. Although I'm being careful not to make assumptions on metrics alone. For example, if you are supporting a large number of novice remote users, the complexity and the amount of time needed to solve problems, it just increases, and sometimes significantly, which has nothing to do with, where the staff is located, and, how productive they are. And that includes users with little experience with remote collaboration tools. When we started using them, across the business exclusively, there was a lot of time to sort of get users ramped up, which a lot of times took more time from a support standpoint. So that really kind of just blew the metrics out the window. So I like I said, I don't typically just look at metrics alone. And I mentioned this before, as far as the staff is concerned, over a period of time, you realize that there are some staff that actually became more productive, working from home. And there were those that struggle with it because of all the distractions. For example, if your kids were home,
Right.
I've had people that decided that, well, I usually walk my dog on a weekend at 5 p.m. or 3 p.m. So I'm going to do that during the day and then come back, to work. So, and there's a lot more distractions, and some people are able to deal with those distractions and some aren't. But one of the things that we're looking to do as managers and leaders is that now there's a different type of training that we have to issue to our employees. And that is, time management guides, training for how to work remotely effectively, without having, constant interaction with their managers, face to face with supervisors. It's a I hate to use this word, but it's a totally different norm or paradigm shift. And I think that the training, you have to train them to be able to work remotely. I mean, that's part of the process now. And setting up policies for working remotely, for example, when someone calls, you might want to answer the phone, simple things like that. They seem simple, but sometimes you absolutely have to communicate those things as part of the work from home process.
Yeah, you made some really good points there. I'll comment briefly, and then we can pass it to Samantha. Part of so our group is really figuring out for each employee within the technology team what their plan is going to be moving forward. And part of what I tell all of our managers is you really have to have kind of a heart-to-heart conversation with each person to figure out where they're going to be most effective. Because Terry, to your point, some people like working in the office. They like the driving to work and being there and not being distracted by things in their house. Other people are more effective at home than they are in the office. Some people like me, I can't stand either one as a whole. I want the variety back and forth. So to me, I think the takeaway is the more you can tune the plan to how people are going to be most effective, the more successful it's going to be. And some people just can't work from home effectively. It's just the way it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So it looks like Kirby's back. So Kirby, I think Samantha's next.
Yeah, so I would completely agree with
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes. So I would say that I completely agree with Terry and Aaron, and absolutely right. I think different groups, different people like to work differently, and I think there are also within technology there are certain functions that can manage themselves. If a group of people that are doing specific type of tickets, you already know that what to expect, and the rest is we leave up to the managers to, as Aaron said, have heart-to-heart discussion about what is productive for them. So some people, as we will continue to see, would like to be in a group setting. They're more productive there. At the same time, there are other individuals that are more productive when they're working remote or work from somewhere else. And I also see that different groups, the same people, chooses or flexes their point of view depending on the project need when they need to understand business needs, requirements, etc. Initial phases of the project, as Joe was mentioning before. I do see them flexing and coming into the office when they have one-on-one with their leaders, managers, when they have slightly a larger group meeting, barring the COVID restrictions. I see them feeling the need to be on site with the groups or the individuals. So it's kind of, and we personally at iCare Partners, I would like to, for the technology group, I would like to keep it that way. And I think it's working very well for us so far.
Yeah, and so we actually have some departments to do more and some departments to less. It's interesting culturally how we've allowed some self-selection and who likes to be around each other a little bit more and who likes to stay away. It's an interesting, probably an interesting study someday. And for some reason, our accounting folks all like to be in the office. I don't know why, but how about you, Jim?
Yeah, Kirby, I agree with some of the other comments, especially one that Aaron mentioned earlier about not being too prescriptive. When we started looking at our return to work program, we started going through and looking at particular roles in the organization. And we said, these are roles that probably could work remote, and these are roles that should be on site. And every time we came up with an example, we found an exception to that. And we said, but there's sometimes it really should be on site, or maybe there's sometimes that working remote would be better. And we found that you really can't paint a policy with a broad brush that applies to everybody. And we've adopted, and I really like the Mary Barra, quote of do what makes sense or work appropriately. It was like, what needs to be done. We set goals, we have targets, we have SLAs, we have project metrics, and do what needs to be done. And sometimes that means, you're working a normal 8 to 5 day. Sometimes you can mix things that are priorities in your personal life with getting things done that need to be completed at work. And And really, at the end of the day, that's what's most important for us. And I think it's brought some flexibility back in terms of a work-life balance. Whether something gets done at 8 in the morning or 8 at night and it's behind the scenes, who really cares? As long as it's getting done. But when you need to collaborate, when you need to innovate, being together real time is important. So I think that's one of our learnings, is not to try to paint things with a broad brush, and do what makes sense when it makes sense.
Yep. Very good. How about you, Joe?
A couple of things. I have a quote. I wish I knew who to credit this to, but the quote that stays with me is, if you don't trust your team, you're either too controlling or you have the wrong team. Either way, it's your problem to fix. So I like to use that. That's a reminder that it stays up on my screen all the time of you have to trust the folks that you have. I have another thing that I use, as obviously we've been pushed into a more flexible work schedule and more people working from home and juggling childcare and education and all those things. And so I have a very simple policy. We don't have a written policy on it, but my policy is, if you're working from home and I notice, it's a problem. And so it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing to say, you know what, if you're working from home, I expect to be able to contact you. I expect the same work. If I notice that things aren't getting done, or I can't find you, or those kinds of things, now we have something that we need to have a conversation about. And I believe that is the manager's role, the leader's role, to step in and go, okay, I see that there's an issue here. I got to speak up. And that's sometimes a difficult conversation to have, but in this environment, those are things that have to happen.
Yeah, so we actually have a group that I never thought we'd see go remote. And with Subhantha's help, our call center has gone remote. Training and our classes, starting to do their work remote from day one, which is a huge shift for us. But we actually require those employees to sign a document in the beginning that says, if you don't hit certain SLAs, we reserve the right to bring you back to the office. And we will have those conversations with you along the way, and they will be difficult, but we have the same expectation regardless of where you sit. And so we've given them the technology to do the job, but they still have to follow through. So that's a really good point. I do want to kind of dive off topic for a second. Dennis has a really interesting question. And I think it's one that, as the only HR professional in the room, I would love to just talk on for the rest of the time, but I'm not. So I think that we should talk about it as a team. And so, Aaron, how about let's have you go first on this one. Business culture is built upon, I guess, can everybody see the question in the chat, or just me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, I think this is a really good where to go. So how do you all intend to continue to build that corporate culture when you don't have the water cooler?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a couple factors. Number one, I think what COVID has proven is that the old belief that everything happens in the office, like those relationships are only built, they can only be built in an office where everybody comes to. I think we're finding that's not completely true. A lot of deep relationships have been formed during COVID. We've all hired employees where we maybe never even saw them physically when they started. It's a different kind of relationship building, but it's still a relationship. However, I do agree with this comment that there is still a real value to physical interaction. So I think we've all seen that some of the ad hoc, what we've missed is the ad hoc collaboration. To me, it's mainly just because of when you're not physically around someone, it's not as easy to just happen into them and have a conversation. You have to schedule it, or you have to think, I'm going to pick up the phone and call this person because a thought popped into my head. So for us, that's why we're crafting our policy to make sure that we have the appropriate time in the office to have those ad hoc conversations, to have those brainstorming sessions. So we retain the best of the office, which is the ad hoc collaboration and kind of the brainstorming. But then we also retain what we've gained from working from home, which is a lot of deep work and sometimes better productivity and better thinking where you're not distracted.
Yeah. How about you, Subhantha?
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. I also do think that the in-person interaction is absolutely important. I think the type of interaction that you can have in person can never be replaced by any of the technologies. But with our current situation, the way it goes and it is going, and probably for unforeseeable future, I do see us building my employees building strong relationship with each other. I have, as I was mentioning, I have distributed team, and I have individual contributors, managers, directors working remote from their home or from another facility, and I do see them working very well collaboratively. Of course, are there operational challenges and issues? There would be, of course, but I do see them working very well. The water cooler conversation, and as someone else would call that, leading by wandering around, or building relationship by wandering around. Yes, that is more effective if you are in person. But again, I think I do see that technology helps. I think pinging someone that you do not know, I am finding that some of the team members said, "Hey, Sapantha, guess what? I chatted with this person. I would not have probably otherwise chatted if I was in person," because the technology made it easier for them for some people to reach out to someone who is unknown, or who is perceived to be either unapproachable, or did not have the need to approach. So I see that other side of the story, that where I think technology helped build some of that.
Yes, Supantha's talking about me. I'm pretty unapproachable in the office, so people hide from me until they chat and get to know me a little bit. So anybody else have anything different to add? One of the things that I was told was to get you all to argue a little bit, and we haven't done that yet. But anything different than the first two have added, or I'll get back to the agenda.
Well, I had a comment. I've known Dennis for years. Dennis always asks really good questions, so no surprise. But I tell you, it's maybe something we learned going through it. When you talk about culture, and maybe something I learned going through. We started to have lunchtime group video sessions, with our division when COVID hit, and incorrectly at the beginning, I thought that people wanted to come together and hear what's happening in the company, what's happening with our projects, what's happening in the divisions. And we'd have these meetings, and inevitably after so many meetings, somebody at the end of a meeting would say, "Oh, by the way, I was just married, and let me show you a wedding picture," or, "Oh, my son just graduated, and let me show you a picture of that." And that became one individual to two to three. And pretty soon these lunchtime meetings were less about communicating what's happening in the organization and more about talking about the things that were going on in people's lives. It's very easy to share a picture. And when you think about company culture and what we lost by being in the office, we used to walk from desk to desk and see pictures, of our families and things that were on somebody's desk. And that was how you started to develop relationships, things that you had in common, that began to be replaced by, our lunchtime sessions that were more about talking about things that were going on in people's lives and sharing pictures that brought us together. And as I said, less about talking about what's happening in the company.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that also, and this is not really kind of a counterpoint, but obviously simulating physical interaction is extremely difficult. But in terms of water cooler discussions and what I call hallway meetings, I've always been concerned about those, and I found that in a lot of cases that they're not inclusive. When people sometimes meet, make decisions, and talk at the water cooler. And what we've seen is that inclusiveness has actually increased over this time period because, people are inviting people into Zoom meetings, and there's more, discussions with more people. So, I guess as a result of this, I'm not saying water cooler and hallway discussions are bad, but sometimes, they're not inclusive enough. And I've seen that during this time period, that's changed here at Belkin.
All right. Very good. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Yep, you can.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, still working with the fun piece of what we're doing. So one of the other questions was around recruiting and retention, and so and we actually had a question in the chat about it too. So let's talk about that a little bit. And it's ironic that we have Supantha up first to talk about this issue, because I don't think you ever came out to visit during your interview, did you?
I did not. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So the topic next is talking about, sort of what's certainly been a change in mindset here at Eye Care Partners, and that is the shift from the finding the best talent in your town versus finding the best talent for your team. Supantha, if you want to start, we'll start with you.
Sure, absolutely, and it is at the end of the day, I am a strong believer that we need to go to where the talent is. And if there are no technology limitations, which is typically for an IT professional, probably very limited limits on usage of technology. A cloud engineer, for example, can work from anywhere and would not have to be in a particular geography. So we have been trying to be, we have been strategically very flexible with our talents where they are, and we have recruited talents that are associated with one of our practices, near to our practices. We have talent that are working 100% remote. Again, some at the individual contributor level, at manager level, at director level, and I think we'll continue to do so as our talent needs evolve throughout our journey at Eye Care Partners. And I know there is another part of this question that talks about the what do we look for in talent? Is it totally technology experience or values, etc.? So what we look for is first of all communication, the soft skills, and the ethics, technology skills. With so rapidly changing technology environment, every 3 years there is going to be another technology coming out. So what I think is, if we get too hard and fast and boxing ourselves with the specific technology skills that we are looking for, we're going to be probably missing out on a large pool of talent that we would not otherwise entertain. So while we look for certain basic minimum criteria about talents, we are also looking for someone who has the right soft skills, who can grow with us, who can evolve with us, who has the right passion to learn new things, stretch themselves beyond their comfort zone, and be part of really a growth story, who wants to be part of something that is bigger than I come to work from 9 to 5 and do my job.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How about you, Jim?
So, I think one of the things that we've had a challenge with when you talk about the remote work is when we've brought in new employees who are either strictly remote or new employees who are earlier in their career. When it's strictly remote, some of the challenges, you don't build the relationships with your coworkers the same way as when you're sitting next to them. And work can sometimes be thought of as more transactional than it is, relationship. You've heard people say they, don't, when they leave, when they retire, they don't miss the work, but they miss the people who is there. And I think that's one of the challenges of adopting a remote workforce is, how do you start to build those relationships? It's doable, but it takes longer and it's a little bit harder to do. We talked about some of the things that we did over lunch and so forth. And the other piece that's a bit of a challenge for us is with individuals who are earlier in their career, who maybe don't have the experience of working in a corporate culture, coming up to speed and adopting some of those, what I'll call cultural norms. We'll actually bring people in deliberately, more frequently than not, at the onset of them starting their roles, college hires and so forth, pair them up with a mentor and help them get acclimated into the culture that's important to us. We got a fantastic team of individuals here, and pairing somebody up and getting some face time when they're coming into the organization is beneficial, and it accelerates that adoption that we talked about.
Yeah, one of the other things that you mentioned that I have seen in our HR group with some newer career individuals is email conversation and what is viewed as the norm, right? You see GIFs or GIFs in your email responses, and I don't know. There's There's a time and a place, and sometimes you see them and you kind of cringe a little bit. So how about you, Terry? How about you from a hiring perspective? What have you seen out there?
Yeah, well, Belkan is also in the recruiting business. We recruit talent for other companies. And I would say that talent anywhere is the new standard. It works. The market you are in has a huge impact, particularly if you're in the same market locally with multiple Fortune 100 companies with large IT staffs. Many of them are in constant hiring mode and are scaling. But today, in the talent market, if you're not flexible with your work location requirements, if you're going to be at a recruitment disadvantage. And I've not come across personally any candidate that recently has stated, I will only come and take the job, if I can come and work in the office. I mean, I've just not come across that type of candidate yet. It's actually been just the opposite. And it has nothing to do with the COVID concerns. It's just a new expectation now that every company offers that flexibility. I'm doing something a little bit different here in that retention is my number one priority. So I have to do less, recruiting unless I'm scaling, but I have to do less recruiting if I control retention. And so I'm actually going through a process of re-recruiting my own staff. So I'm treating them as if, I'm looking for talent, outside of the company. That means that, looking at, salary, benefits, a number of things that we would use to entice external candidates. So it's a process that I'm going through. It's an interesting process. I think they like the idea of being re-recruited because, we're getting an idea of where they want to go in their career, how we can help them get there. So, we're treating them like we would treat, people that we would bring in from the outside, which sometimes is missed that, you sometimes forget about that and you're really selling and selling and selling to outside candidates. So we're selling and selling and selling and re-recruiting our own talent right now. But some of the things we look for, we want employees that what I would consider assignment flexible. That they don't want to come in and say, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I do. That they're willing to upskill and that they're passionate about what they do. I mean, those are some of the basics. Obviously, we expect that they're going to have the technical expertise that we're recruiting for. But I would say assignment flexibility in today's world is a necessity. It's hard to have a staff full of people that can only do one thing.
That's awesome. Jim, how about you?
We feel the same way. We wear multiple hats. I mentioned being a 115-year-old fintech. It's very much an entrepreneurial type of spirit here, and folks come together to get things done that may or may not be in their traditional wheelhouse. I think what comment that was made a moment ago. We've interviewed folks that have been in other markets or even been in our own markets who, when they've come in, they've said to us, hey, I want to guarantee that I'll never, ever have to step foot into an office again. And we've turned away some of those folks. Back when I mentioned before about a hybrid work environment, there's been times that we said, I think you can be a mix of the two, but if something comes up that needs you to be in the office, if it's a collaborative meeting, if we're innovating, if we're designing, you may need to come in. And quite frankly, I think what we want is people who share that same mindset. Who say, when it makes sense to be in, I'm going to be in. And when it doesn't, and I could work remote, then I'll work remote. So, yeah, we've seen some of that. It's certainly shifted in terms of maybe if you look back a year or so ago, I think there were some companies who were going through furloughs and reductions, and they tell their staff, hey, you're lucky to have a job. And now a year later, people are coming back and saying, you're lucky to have me. So we've definitely seen a shift. And like I said, I think for us at least, we've not been willing to accommodate folks who've said, I want to be 100% remote. I'll go back to the comment to say, we'll do it makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Joe?
Very similar. We've done the remote hiring work. We've gotten a little bit better at it. We'll bring a part of a team on to do a screening, and we'll do an interview as a group. And then more recently, we've broken that out and turned those into two of my current staff. We'll talk with them, or one, we'll give them a phone call, get a little more casual interaction. Again, trying to replace that in-person interaction interview thing. So we have evolved, I think, in our ability to recruit via Zoom or Teams calls by literally breaking it out and being very intentional about the things that we're going to discuss, having a group screen, agreeing that we're going forward, and then breaking that out into some one-on-one calls. Just to get a little more casual. We found that the candidates tend to relax a little bit, and we say, okay, we're going to set you up for 20 minutes or 30 minutes with one of these other folks, and then we'll come back in this other way, and they tend to relax, and we get a better sense of that when we make it not a 1-on-6 interview thing.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I don't know that anybody's nailed the how do you make the interview process feel like you're across the table from somebody, because there's so much more that can be read, even just body language, that we see the top half of us today. There's so much more going on, but one of the words that you just said, Joe, and I think it's a theme that you guys have touched on throughout this conversation is, and it comes back to the culture piece, who is being intentional, and each of the 5 of your companies have a culture and have an intentional approach to how you view this hybrid work environment. And so, Jim, for you, it's saying no to fully remote, and that's the culture that you all embrace. And so I think it's great that all of our companies are figuring out what that means for each other and for yourselves, and live by that, right? Because that's what really is going to drive your employees' successes, and then ultimately your all successes, because each company is a little bit different, right? So the next step then, and this was one of the questions from earlier, is let's go from recruiting. You found a great candidate who could be virtual or somewhat virtual. Any changes or thoughts to how you are working to onboard those folks to get them up and running, again, because they're not right in front of you and you don't have the water cooler time. So let's start with Jim on that one.
Yeah, sure. I mentioned before that that's one of our challenges when you're onboarding somebody, especially if they're earlier in their career, to kind of bring them up to speed. Somebody who's a bit more seasoned, probably worked in a corporate environment, a little bit easier to do. We'll pair somebody up, whether we call it a mentor if they're earlier in their career, coming out of college, or certainly with a partner if they're new to the company, is one of the ways that we started to adopt acclimating individuals in the organization. In the past, they sit across the aisle, and if they had a question, you could kind of yell over the wall and ask it. Now, to have an individual who's kind of there right with you to answer any questions that you have or give you some guidance is one of the ways that we've helped to facilitate the onboarding process. We also have some meetings that we look to turn video on when we get to know each other. I talked about some of the information sharing sessions that we have. If you get to see individuals, see their background, see pictures of things going on in their lives, it's a way of getting to know one another. Other meetings we leave video off, but those are a couple of things that we've done.
All right, very good. Aaron?
Sure. So part of what we found has been successful when we've onboarded new people, and I think it generally goes for any person. And then to other people's points, I think Jim mentioned people, maybe as their first role out of college, or someone new to an industry. We're hiring a lot of people now in technology that have never worked in construction before, because there's an explosion of technology in construction. So the pool of candidates to pull from that have already worked in construction is pretty small. So generally what's worked for us is for us, it's at least the first 3 months of someone's, start with us. They're probably in the office nearly 100% for the first month. And then after that, we're sort of scaling them to where they're going to be in their hybrid plan, but still prioritizing that time in person with all the different stakeholders they need to meet with. I think Jim's point was really good that when some training, it's actually easier to do it over Zoom when you're just screen sharing, but other training is really hard to do over Zoom and really easy to do in person in a conference room. And so we try to just honor that and think about, what am I trying to learn from this stakeholder? What's the best avenue for that? If it's on Zoom, the person can be anywhere. If it's best done in person, then we make sure that happens in person. And our new employees have really, as they've been surveyed, they've felt very happy considering the situation that we've all been through with the onboarding experience that they've had.
Very good. Is your HR team doing stuff in person, or have they moved most of their, the benefits explanations and all that to an online approach?
Yeah, they've really taken that similar approach of do what works best for the task at hand. So some of that review happens over Zoom earlier in the conversation, which makes it easier on their first day not to be like overwhelmed with, here's this gigantic stack of electronic paperwork you have to fill out. But typically on the first day, subject to the restrictions that we're under, they do spend one-on-one time with them in the office to go over all their questions. But yeah, that we've leveraged virtual to make that a lot easier.
Good. How about you, Joe? How about onboarding?
Similar corporate onboarding, the onboarding to company policies, SOP, that kind of thing has gone fully remote. The orientation of new hires on my team is primarily remote. We do have people come and do on-site things, but again, it's like most of us have a distributed team. We're not even all in the same town, so a lot of that training goes on in a remote fashion for us. And I'll come back to that word. You have to be intentional about it. Whoever that team lead is, I ask them to give a calendar, give a schedule and topics, and be intentional about what you're going to cover, what day. So they know, I know, and everybody has a sequence, and we're going to make sure that we don't drop the ball on getting people onboarded properly. We want them to feel welcome, to feel that we want them on the team, and you do that by being intentional and paying attention to them.
Yeah, I think intentional is one of my favorite words. So you can use it all day long, Joe. I love it. It's certainly one of my favorites. I'm not always great at it, but I love the word. How about you, Terry?
Well, this has been a top priority for us because we've onboarded, looked at the numbers, over 2,000 or more in the past year. And we've made 2 acquisitions during the peak of the pandemic. So I would say that it certainly has been a challenge. But one of the things that we've done is that we've actually trained our managers and leaders in ways and methods to be able to onboard employees, make them feel part of the organization, and in some cases where necessary, introduce them to others that may help them, acclimate to the new environment. So there's been a lot of, we've had offsites with managers and our leaders across the business to ensure that they have the tools. And a lot of managers have not done this type of onboarding before, at least not at this level and this number. So it required some training because that's really what it comes down to. The people that they see the most are the leaders and the managers that they interact with. So, they have to be adept at onboarding effectively. And I'll say my boss, our CEO, has been more intimately involved in the process. But we've also built out what we call it's called a Belkan University, which, we actually educate employees on the company, our culture, who's who in the organization, so they know who to go to, because a lot of times that's the issue. You're out there alone and you don't know who to go to, who to talk to if you have certain questions. So we've built what we call Belkan University to help acclimate employees. And you have to do something like this if you're onboarding, talent, 2,000, employees, and you're making acquisitions during the pandemic. So those are steps that we have taken to help onboard employees, and including mentorship in some cases. But this is extremely important to us because most of our employees, based on the type of work that we do, we don't have 3 or 4 weeks for them to acclimate. We need them, since they're billable, obviously, we need them to get up to speed fairly quickly.
Subhanta, how about you?
So I'll use the favorite word of ours today, intentional. So we have been intentional about requesting the new employee to be on site for the first week, wherever possible. So wherever possible, and if there are no restrictions, typically we have found that the onboarding is very successful, and the employees have much better assessment and rating of the onboarding process if a person who is going to be remote, pretty much most of their work time is in person on the first week, to meet with the team, get to know the key players, meet with the key business stakeholders, as well as kind of given the overall organization strategy, technology strategy, what means to them, how they are part of a much larger mission than what they're going to do for us within that particular team. So we are really intentional about creating that first week on-site type of culture for the team members or teammates that may not be able to be physically with us for a longer duration. And then what we try to do is, during the first 3 months or so, we intentionally invite them for frequent visit to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. As some of us have already mentioned, there are different trainings, different types of discussion that are more effective through Zoom and digital media. At the same time, there are discussions that are more effective if they are done in person. So we try to bridge that gap that way. It's been working most of the time. That's our philosophy at this point.
All right, very good. So we're getting towards the end of this. We got about 10 minutes left. If anybody else has any other questions you want me to specifically address, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and I'll ask them. One that has come in that we haven't talked to yet is sharpest pain point that you all have noticed. I think we're back to the beginning of the line from my order. So actually, Jim, did you go first that time? Sorry, I'm trying to make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Yeah, Jim went first. So Aaron, how about you? Biggest pain point you've seen so far and how you've addressed it?
I guess one of the pain points we've had, and I think somebody else addressed it a little bit previously, is training or informing all of our employees on all the capabilities and features of everything that we have, which, I mean, that's a problem for all of us all the time. But I think during COVID, it became a lot worse because people were thrown into using new tools that they weren't comfortable with. And so you had to balance, you don't want to overwhelm people with too much information, but you want to get the information out there so they can use it. And a lot of our employees were used to the service that our technology group would give, which is come down to their desk and walk them through it, which we couldn't do during COVID. So, it was a learning process for everyone, and we got through it as a team, like I'm sure everybody did. But I would say we've gotten better at that. I think our communication in updates to tools and just making them real brief and easy to understand, I think has gotten better as part of COVID.
Yeah, very good. I know our help desk knows me well now, because of all the tickets I've had to put in during this time. How about you, Joe?
I
Biggest pain
think
point.
our maintaining our security level through all of this for the people working from home and wanting to use their home devices or this device or that device, and educating why that wasn't going to be acceptable, educating the rest of the executive team on why that wasn't going to be acceptable, and how to maintain our security posture, as certainly this group knows. During that time when everybody was scrambling to work from home, boy, the attacks, the cyber attacks just went up dramatically. So maintaining the security posture was probably the biggest pain point of making sure that the security posture stayed in place and that people understood the why and the communication of the why, which sometimes went down a technical rabbit hole that wasn't always easy to explain. But that was probably the biggest pain point that I had.
Did you get a lot of people asking to use their home printer?
A lot of people have to use a lot of things that we couldn't do.
Yeah, when we were in hiring, I got a lot of that, right? People were like, well, do I just use my own printer? And I was like, oh, I don't think so. How about you, Terry?
Well, it's the same thing that Joe mentioned. It was maintaining, the same security profile. And in some cases, we had to make additional investments in security with the new way people were working or wanted to work. We didn't want security to become, an obstacle for people and how they needed to work. But at the same time, the most important thing and the most important part of my job is maintaining security. Since we are in space and defense and we do military work, there are certain guidelines and things that we have to follow in terms of protecting, IP, ITAR, DFARS. There's a number of compliance components to the work we do, and working from home changed everything. Before the pandemic, that simply was not allowed. You could not work from home doing any type of specific, government work, and all that changed because a lot of government agencies found ways to work from home. So it gave us the ability to make the changes. But I would say maintaining security, Joe is right. The attacks, they significantly increased because they expected chaos during this time period. So that was the first thing that we did before we changed anything. We made sure that we maintained the same level of security profile, and we made some significant investments to ensure that.
Yeah, Kirby, I'd add one more.
Supanta, I want your take. Oh, yep. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're asking about pain points, going through it. And I tell you, one that we have is a much greater turnover than what we've had in the past that we're accustomed to. We've always had, we're a 115-year-old company. Turnover has always been very low. Tenureship is high. And, with COVID, we probably all have seen companies on the East Coast and the West Coast coming in and poaching higher salaries. And I think, one of the things that we've seen from that is, I guess they've always been there before, is some of the more intangibles. Always in the past, you could always go and jump ship and 10% more, 15% more, somewhere else. And we've had folks who have, left for the allure of a bigger salary and then have gotten into a different role and said, they miss the colleagues, they miss the company, they miss the work, they miss the things that they were doing. And we've actually had some that have come back. So, one of our lessons learned is when, if we were losing somebody that was a regrettable loss, that you have a good conversation with them, no different than anything else in life. You don't burn any bridges, you share with them that, we're going to miss you and I wish you all the best. And if things don't work out the way you think they will, you've always got a home here. You've got an open door. And we've had folks that have come back, after going to the other side. So that's been important to us.
It's good. Yeah. Keeping the door open for the boomerang is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Supantha, so I want to give you a chance to answer this question too, but I'm going to lead the witness a little bit because we're really the only healthcare company on here, and so we're talking about pain points and security, and we kind of went down a rabbit hole that way. But there's an additional, so talk about that a little bit too, because we do have patient information and now working in the remote environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you already hit those points, Kirby, and everybody else in for that matter. So I'll probably talk about an operational challenge, right? So when we had to send a large workforce to home, I think we sometimes ignore or downplay the fact that as the users needed to learn how to use the systems differently, work through Zoom and etc., different technologies, the IT teammates had to also learn how to support newer environment, right? So there had been, I would not call it a pain point as such, but in general, I have seen, and I think the other panelists would agree with that the technology teams had to also learn and evolve in this evolving unprecedented situation. Or how do you support this many remote users and still have the right level of user experience, right level of sense of urgency, right level of cuddling and hugging to give, so everybody feels that they are loved. So there has been challenging situations.
All right, I didn't see any other last minute questions come in. I just wanted to say thanks to the five of you for being on here, taking some time and sharing your knowledge. I know that that's taking time out of your days to do your normal job, and appreciate everybody that showed up to listen and dealt with in the distributed world my technology issues. So thanks everybody. It's been great to meet you all, and I'm sure we'll see you again someday. Thanks.
Thanks
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye everybody.